All right, great. So welcome everybody. We're doing a regular team meeting of user feedback team. And this week we want to prepare for the public session that we're going to be doing together with the Node.js tooling ecosystem. So we have Christopher Hiller who's joining us, and Chris is the maintainer of Mocha. And Chris, you mentioned you had the opportunity to reach out to a couple folks. How's that outreach doing? Got some folks on the GitHub issues as well.
Yeah, so I have a couple people that want to participate. Yeah, so as I understand, this is going to be kind of a wide open type of session where we're going to want to kind of publicize it and try to get more interest. Is that what's going on?
Right. So what we do with user feedback is bring together, members of the broader community and members of the community committee, the ComCom in the Node.js project, and the technical steering committee. So we really want to provide insight into the needs of end users, and in this case, end users that are leveraging Node to build tooling.
Yeah, and in my mind, the perfect world will build up a group that we come together at some periodic basis. So it's not like a one-time, here's our issues. It's like more of a, here's a group of people that we can regularly keep in touch with. If we're making a decision that seems to affect tooling, we've got a group of people we can talk to in person. As well as sort of, I think, regularly we should have what are the challenges you guys are facing and what can we do on the project side to help work with those is the other kind of flavor of things I'd see happening.
Okay, yeah.
Every 3 months or whatever the right interval is.
Right. So the two people that I've worked with so far are interested in, not just a one-time deal. They want to work with user feedback group and all that good stuff, hopefully on more of a long-term basis. So, yeah, that's the idea.
And like, your earlier question is we also want to be as inclusive as we can. So, anybody who shows up and, self-selects as a representative of that group is welcome to come and participate. We'll see. So it's good to, what you're doing in terms of, finding some specific people you think would be good participants. But on the other hand, we also, that's why you saw the public call to say, hey, if anybody's interested, it's not something we're selecting down to a smaller set. We'll have anybody who wants to get involved.
Right, and that's one of our sort of basic motions inside of the project, right? Trying to create open on ramps for everyone to participate.
All right. On that issue, have we had many people who've said they're going to show up, or?
So there's an IBMer here that is +1. Jerish Punathil is he interested in do you know what he's working on? Is he working on tooling, or is he
he's part of our service team? So I work quite closely with him, and he's got an interest in tooling, of course, and that we need tools to support our customers. And he'd be writing some tools to help do that kind of stuff. So that's where his interest comes from.
Great. I wanted to categorize folks a bit. If they're there to participate in feedback or give feedback or listen to feedback, versus if they're actively whether in the situation like we were at Index, whether they would be on stage, right?
Right. Yes. Yeah, I'm not quite sure. I'll next time I talk to him, I'll figure that out. But
So I'd like I'd like to ask, is there like a specific issue I can point people to? Because I have a few people that I think I would probably be interested in this, who just haven't seen it yet, or
Yep,
aren't
pasting
aware.
it in the,
Perfect.
somebody else, Dan just did. Paste, there you go.
Perfect. So I don't think y'all mind if I post this or like send this to them, I assume.
Nope,
That should
no,
be-
absolutely. Like I
Sure,
tweeted it
fine.
out earlier, and so like whatever we can do to kind of publicize it, right?
Yeah. Awesome.
What about something like Node Report on on your team there, Michael? Since it is coming front and center in diagnostics, might be interesting to engage. Who's leading that effort?
The two guys who I had leading that effort are actually a little bit focused on other things right now.
Okay.
But we will be like, I'm looking for the person who's going to help pull it into core, and you're right that then that person would be the right one to sort of get involved from that perspective too.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'll take an action to figure out who we can get on that side. May not be for the first one, but it's definitely a good idea.
Yeah,
so
that'd be great.
okay, it sounds like so Chris, you've got a couple people. Are they signed up? Like, so they're available at the time next week? And
I will confirm. I've let them know about it, but I haven't sent them a calendar invite or anything like that.
It just seems like it'd be good if with you that would be like sort of 3. So it'd be nice to have them there. If they can't make it, maybe we should look at a different time even, right?
Right. Okay. Yeah, I'll follow up with them and make sure everybody's available.
Okay.
So, Michael, as a representative of the TSC, I know Miles said he was going to just bring this to the TSC meeting the other day. Were you on?
I know. That was the early meeting. So
right.
It was, and I was actually in the UK, so it was even earlier. So I didn't make it.
Okay.
I guess that was just for visibility as opposed to anything like, hey, this is happening. If people know somebody to mention it.
Okay.
That might even have been the, let's mention in the meeting today. That might have been the modules meeting actually.
Okay.
Which there was one this week as well, which I also didn't make because I was traveling. But
I think they were on the same day, actually.
Right. So yeah. So I think and that's the day I was flying. Anyway, because I think I see when I read those two comments, I thought that's what he meant was the module side of things.
Okay. So I'm keenly interested in this session to bring a little bit more representation from the TSC. If we can
Sure.
find folks that can dedicate the time.
Where do we draw a line between TSC and Core Collaborator? Because I think Core Collaborator in this instance might be just as important as TSC member.
Sure.
Okay.
And actually, when I was creating this issue, I was typing it out. I really had that realization too. It's like, yeah, I'm not really just looking for TSC. I'm looking for core collaborators to engage, and anyone who's working on core to have insight. But notwithstanding, I am particularly given the trajectory that the tooling team would like to take, which would be a greater involvement. Tooling folks would like to take, not team, sorry. Having the TSC around as representatives of kind of that oversight group would be of particular interest. So in this case, I'm actually looking for TSC, but I'm also looking for the collaborators.
What's this like? It sounds like there's some details there, like in terms of what discussions you've had around what the tooling people want to do, or what's the context of that?
Right. So the context is, how does tooling, like we've seen with modules, engage with the technical project in the long term, right? So this is a dialogue opener,
Right.
and we don't know the path. There's not a lot of existing patterns beyond modules, for where ecosystem interests like this plug in. So is it ComCom? Is it on the technical side of the house? Is it admin-y? Don't know. What's the next step? Where do we go with this? And if we don't have technical folks at the table, then I'm concerned that any needs or interest wouldn't be heard as readily, and it'll just be proxied through.
Sure. Okay. So it's that we're gonna have an ongoing group here, and just to make, you're really saying let's make sure we get the right group on both sides, right?
Right. Well, right. Not in a selective manner, but have some representation, right?
Yeah. So yeah, I think in that sense, maybe after we have the initial discussions and you and I understand a bit better, we could go back and look at who might be interested, and then ping them and say, hey, these kind of discussions are happening. Maybe can you spare the time, that kind of thing.
What I have in my mind, guys, so I was thinking about Walmart, about Joel. So do we have, can we ping him, or can we tell him about this?
That's a great idea. Yeah, it'd be great to have
we've got great feedbacks from Walmart. So probably, I'm pretty sure they will be interested.
That's a great idea.
So I mean, I think in the first, so if we're thinking about the meeting next week, what we want to accomplish, I mean, in my mind, it would be great to, obviously understand who the different people are who are going to start to participate, and then maybe dig a little bit into, what's going right or what's going wrong, because I think that will help us decide what we need to do going forward, right? Like if it's, hey, we're all happy, there's no real problems, then there's not necessarily, well, I'm sure there'll be interesting things to discuss, but it'll be more of we'll have to come up with, thoughts of, what kind of information would we want or whatever. But if there's specific things that are like, here, these are real pain points, that will give us some direction in terms of okay, well, if we want to start working on some of those pain points, who would be people that are involved, and, that kind of side of things.
Yeah, so coupled individuals to sort of potentially reach out to invite. Miles as one of the leads of the modules working group, just to, looking at that framing, and then maybe someone like Jordan Harband over at Airbnb, who's one of the participants of the modules group. Right, so not like Tony was saying, a collaborator, not a TSC member.
Yeah.
No, but
sorry, go ahead.
I guess Chris, how closely aligned do you think the people working on modules are to the kind of tooling issues and stuff that you were thinking the sort of kind of things you wanted to address by bringing this group together?
I'm not really familiar with the modules group.
Right. So they're focused on ES6 support, ES6 support in Node, and
specifically around the modules implementation.
Yeah, like how the implementation of those modules, how that ES6 support will be implemented. I guess the interaction could be is that some of that may affect what some tooling can do and what some modules built on top of it can do, right? So for example, how do you test ES6 modules that might affect Mocha?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's some overlap, but I wouldn't say necessarily any more overlap than any other.
Yeah.
That's sort of what I was unless you think that that's a good fit, I think we might want to be a bit cautious on, I'd like Chris to bring the group that he was thinking of together, plus whoever else selects as being in the tooling area, and see what the concerns are, and then figure out who to bring in, as opposed to trying to pre-figure that out.
Yeah, the thing I'd be most concerned about with pre-figuring that out is optimizing for the people who have already given feedback pretty extensively, Miles and Jordan. They've been involved in the project for quite a while. And I'd just be concerned that we're, continuing to build an echo chamber kind of to ourselves and the feedback that we've already gotten, and elevating those voices over something with people who at least I've consistently had conversations with that feel like we're kind of very much in an echo chamber in a very exclusive environment.
Right.
It's hard to break into. So I think we really should try to optimize for the ecosystem tooling people who haven't really even ever interacted with the Node project.
Yeah. Yeah. So like that's where I'm like, I'd like to, have the new people come in, tell us what they're thinking, help us understand a bit better, concerns and where they might want to, see things and where they might see things going. And then from that, we can sort of figure out, well, how do we bring in, additional people from the project to align with that versus some other way.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
I've already reached out to a few people, so yeah, I will definitely point people in that direction.
So can we talk through that a little bit, Michael? Where would we, I don't, my concern, I guess, is, we're creating space for this discussion, and then where does it go? Right? It's not clear that it lives in the, ComCom. User feedback is not an incubation space for initiatives.
I don't think it needs to go anywhere.
Okay.
Like if our, my sort of thing on the user feedback is our focus is to keep the regular contact with these groups.
Mm-hmm.
And then, once the contact takes place, if there's concrete actions that need to happen out of those, like, so, for example, it's like, here's a real pain point. Then, this group is our action is to figure out how to pull in the other people who can discuss maybe that specific pain point, have a specific meetings around that, right? I think what you're thinking is, well, like, do we need to immediately go to a strategic initiative around this or a working group? Or I could see that being useful in some cases, but I think it's equally perfectly reasonable if we just have, like, every 3 months we get together the group of, in the different user representatives, this one is around people building tooling, and have a discussion, because even if we have a discussion this time and they said, hey, the project, what you're doing, everything is great, we like what you're doing. You might say, well, yeah, but okay, that's good to hear, but let's come back in 3 months and we'll just make sure we haven't changed anything that's annoying you. Or if we're going to do something and we think it is going to affect that group, we can, pull that group together and say, hey, let's have a special meeting because this is what, fill them in, this is what we're doing, get the feedback. So it doesn't have to graduate into something else. Not that it can't. Like, if there's some very specific things, you might say, well, okay, let's spin a strategic initiative about that. Or even if it's, I could see working groups making sense, but I think the working groups sort of have to have like a fairly close relationship to core almost, right?
So, Michael, this is something I actually was kind of thinking about going into this, was that, we have this user feedback session and there's some good feedback, maybe even an initiative coming out. Well, there needs to be some sort of champion in core. Really to get much of anything done. And so it seems to me where I think we should be going, and this is not going to happen overnight, is that we need more people who come from this world basically just involved in core. And so if eventually that would form a working group, great. But I guess I do fear that, if we give a bunch of feedback, and it's clear there's some actionable items, who's really suitable to be a champion there. And it just, I'm sure there's somebody on the TSC that works more with command line tooling than others, and maybe that would be a good person to reach out to. But until then, I'm trying to get more involved in core myself, for this reason, and so I'm kind of slowly working up to it. But that's kind of where I think things should probably go. If it turns out everybody's super happy and there's nothing that needs to be done, that's good too. But
Yeah.
I don't feel like there's not going to be there's certainly going to be some things
Yeah.
that come out of this. So
Yeah, no, I think so. I agree 100% with your, that group needs to get more involved, because it's not going to be like, hey, here's a bunch of requirements, somebody else goes off and does it, right? But
right.
I can easily say it's like, hey, here's a bunch of things we'd like to see happen, and we're willing to invest some time in core to make it happen, but we're not as plugged in, so we need some help. And then some other people saying, hey, yeah, okay, we'll support you in doing that. And but the first step is really just coming to an understanding of what those might be and what they look like and how much work they take. And once I think if this group comes up with like, well, here's the documented things, and now everybody understands it better, that's the next step for figuring out how you might actually make it happen.
Yeah. I mean, part of the reason that I kind of proposed this idea was that, myself and some others, who come from this world have kind of, felt like when they propose an idea to core, it's received as something completely out of left field, and that sort of makes sense if the people in core mainly aren't working in that world.
Yep.
And so it's my hope that we can kind of bridge the gap and come to a better understanding of each other's kind of needs and understand that what may be may seem like a strange or unnecessary request is actually very important to a certain set of Node users. So.
Yeah, and that's exactly, if we can use this to bridge the gap, better understand each other, and figure out how to work together on the things that are important, then yeah, that's exactly. Because yeah, I think you're right. If you just open to PR and there's no context and no discussion, it's easy for that just not to go the right way.
Yeah, for sure.
Whereas if you basically had a discussion beforehand, we've identified some people who are interested in the area to come, there's already been a discussion, then you open the PR, and immediately some people can sort of jump in saying, yeah, this is a good idea. You got a much better shot, right?
Right. Definitely. I think there needs to be this kind of, yeah, exactly what you said. I agree.
Yeah, and I think, so I think, that's the path. I think exactly what you described is, we get together, we have this discussion with the user feedback group. If you get to the point where, there's enough people in the tooling committee, like actively working community, then you could easily see it forming into like an internal working group or something like that.
Yeah.
So, we identified the potential for, Miles as, common participant as being the echo chamber. Who, like, can we brainstorm a bit on, who else would be a good fit there from the TSC?
I'm happy to say, hey, this is going on TSC. Anybody else interested, come along.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to do it.
Personally, I'm more interested in, like, before we go out and actively target somebody, I'd want to hear what the group is going to say. Because it's at that point that we'll understand, who in the project we might want to sort of convince. I don't want to, I certainly don't want to say to anybody, don't come. It's just that in terms of actively going to find additional attendees, for me at least, it would be better to understand a bit more what the interest is and what kind of discussions are going to have happen, because that'll help me figure out who I think the right people are, at least in my mind.
I'd also like to kind of cycle, or turn back a little bit and refocus re-clarify what I said earlier. I don't think we should exclude people who have been participating in this kind of discussion in the past. I just want to make sure we're not only including them. like they're not our central people that we're having in this discussion, and that we're actually going out and getting people that are users that haven't participated in addition to those people who have already participated in these discussions.
Like we could easily just throw in that issue there's like an @Node.js/TSC/ComCom, going to be some interesting conversations. Anybody,
already did.
Make sure to attend if you're interested, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think doing it again on like pinging it again, like in this time frame would probably be.
Yeah, it's happening. It's happening on this day, or like maybe the week before, just to remind people or something like that.
Well, isn't this the week before?
No, 2 weeks.
No,
okay.
2 weeks.
Perfect. Yeah. I'm glad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Dan, you might have said it's next week earlier, and I was like,
"Oh shoot, really?"
yeah, that might have thrown me off. Okay, good.
Because I kind of leave it at that. That way, if anybody who's got an interest in tooling, they hopefully show up, and then after, if we, once we see what the conversation has and what the kind of issues or, where the conversation goes, we can be more active to see, we say, oh, well, this person I know does work in that area, that kind of thing.
Great. So what about ComCom? Outside of this group, are there perspectives in, internationalization? Internationalization is mostly for the website, right? It doesn't.
No, it's for all the things actually.
Box.
Yeah, I mean that's where the initial a lot of the work's being taken place, but they did merge the internationalization work that Stephen Loomis was doing. They sort of it wasn't the group he led wasn't all that active, so they actually started that, and that's been now folded into that group. And I think that's where anything around that area we would want to pull them in. So for example, if the if the discussion went with the tooling or provider said, well, you're really making our life with to support multiple languages and stuff, then that would be an obvious, you should pull in people from the internationalization working group into the discussion, right?
Right.
Just not sure if that's if there's concern.
I don't know how much of just having been at a high level involved and helping Ben kind of get that set up and build that out. I don't know how much of a crossover there is with that. The only one that I would really see is just the Electron folks that are involved. So I can ping a few of them and see if they're interested in coming. Because I guess would we classify Electron as tooling? I think I would, but I'm not really sure. Okay.
It's interesting in that, well, we just created a team called Delivery Channels. So this I would almost like, and I could be completely wrong here, but initial thought is a different group of end users. They're a group who take Node and either bundle it into their product and deliver it that way, or they repackage Node like some of the installers, or they help you install it like VM.
Yep.
So that delivery channels was kind of a team, so that whenever we do something around that, we notify them. And Electron's part of that, and the Electron competitor, I always forget the name.
Node.js.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. So I could almost guess having that being another end user group that we could have in the list. It's just a matter of how many groups do you want and how big they should be, and do you want to or do you want to combine things in? Again, I don't know off the top of my head if Electron will have similar concerns to Mocha, for example.
Yeah. But I'm not sure about that one.
Sorry, go ahead.
Tell me more about what delivery channels is. That sounds very.
It's a team.
It's a team. Okay.
So the history behind that was there's some refactoring of our teams within Node.js, right? And there used to be people who were in some teams or the overall team. Like we used to have just a members we refactored, they got dropped out. So they were no longer on any team. And so the discussion actually happened in two different places. One was sort of around people who were repackaging Node and say the distributors, like, you know, the Linuxes who redistribute Node. Electron was another discussion that came. And so distribution channels was basically the best name I could think of that covered all of it. And it's just a team. So it's a matter of like, if we do something that we think affects the packaging of Node or the consuming of Node as a shared library, like Electron does, or anything that sort of affects the people who use Node, like deliver Node to their end customers in some way. So be it by, you know, an installer, repack, you know, bundling, distributing, like in your distribution. It's just a team we can mention to say, hey, we're doing this. Do you have any concerns? Is this going to affect you negatively? That kind of stuff. And so now there's, you know, in those issues, we had an initial set of people. We should probably actually publicize it a little bit more to say, hey, if you're doing something, we can add you to this team and, you know, we'll notify you when things happen. And I think it's again, you know, we may want to at some point reach out to them as a group and say, should we have user feedback sessions with them at some point and sort of to hear what's going on and you know, get them more, make sure there isn't that same thing where they're in an echo chamber that we're not hearing. Just sort of bring the groups a bit closer together. But yeah, and I see Christopher saying that, you know, he thinks they probably have a different set of problems, right? Which was kind of my first. And so it's, we can't have 10,000 different groups, but at this point we only have 2. So we're probably okay with, you know, keeping this one down to, I mean, Chris, do you have an example of the other modules that you're getting people to come in for?
Webpack, NPM.
Okay.
Maybe TypeScript.
Okay.
I also just reached out to someone from Babel, and they're interested in participating as well.
Okay. So yeah, that'll be quite interesting to hear what the overlap is in terms of concern and what concerns are, and, you know, just the, you know, feedback from that group in terms of the things we're doing, you know, LTS, whatever. I think will be very interesting.
So, you know, going over to shifting over to a little bit more agenda bashing. Rich Trott mentioned node issue 19079, which is the runtime deprecation of buffer constructor. You know, I'm just wondering if that particular issue, like that particular concept, is too deep and specific.
I think that one's interesting. I would leave it to the end. Okay. So, you know, my suggestion is like everybody introduce themselves, and then I think we give it as sort of an open floor to Chris and the rest of the people to kind of say, well, what are the kind of things you'd like to talk about? And then at the end, we can say, oh, and one thing we know from the Node community side that we are interested in feedback on is that particular one, because, you know, we've taken a decision. It will affect module owners in general, but, you know, we can get some feedback from this particular group.
Great.
So, I mean, Chris, does that sound reasonable? Like, do you think you know, we're basically going to say to you guys, you know, what is it you'd like to talk about, at least to get started?
Right. Yeah, I was thinking of maybe going back to the few people I've reached out to and say, hey, do you want to bounce a few ideas, you know, around and see, you know, these are our main challenges, and this is kind of what we want to talk about. Just kind of so we're not, it's not chaos or.
Yeah, no, that would be great. Like if you know, if you can put together a short agenda or whatever, that would be
sure. And if you have any like specific questions that you want to ask, I mean, I don't know. It seemed like at Index, Dan, you had a set of questions you wanted to ask. So if you have anything like that, we'd love to know about them ahead of time. Also on the buffer thing, I don't feel like that is any more or less important than anything else necessarily. I know, I don't use buffer very much unless buffer for me comes into play if I am working with node bots or
right.
just communicating over serial. It's not, yeah. So
I think the only thing there would be, it could be as simple as like, are you guys worried about it? No? Okay, move on.
right. Okay.
Like it would give us a little bit of validation that some small subset of the module owners out there really are not bothered, versus if half the people yell up and down saying, yeah, I really don't like that. That's it's just one more place to get a little bit of feedback on that one, and we doesn't need to take very much time at all necessarily.
All right. I mean, it just like taking a wild guess, it would be, I would expect the people that were worried about that to have kind of legacy code they need to keep running. And so that's not necessarily tooling.
Yeah. So, I mean, but I think it's, my suggestion is we just have it on an agenda item that says like, is this anything that you guys are worried and want to talk about? And if the answer is no, we move on, because that's basically the answer.
Sure.
And if there is a discussion, if people do want to discuss it, then yeah. So that's all I'd suggest. We could come up with some like generic questions in terms of, my questions would be: are there things, very general ones, like are there things the project that is doing that makes your life more difficult? How about, in terms of things like the LTS release cycle is, how are you finding that? Does it help or hurt your, the releases that you need to support? I guess even like any API, I guess it's only for people who have native modules. So I don't know how much that is, and it's going to be in this
tooling, right? Again, I think that there might be
there's a fair amount
consideration. Really?
Yeah, stuff like Node SAS.
Oh yeah. Oh my god.
So
right, so it would kind of be like, how soon are you planning to move up to an API would be
right.
Those kind of questions we could go through. It's I don't have any specific things that are like other than well, I don't have any other specific things, but it's more about sort of teasing out, are there any pain points or other things that we should be aware of going forward, so that we have enough knowledge to understand how we might affect that end user group, and at least be aware of it when we do things.
Chris, I'd like to ask if I could just DM you or something after we're done here, just so I can make sure we're not crossing streams, because I think we're talking about similar groups of people to reach out to. So I just want to make sure I'm not creating extra churn on inviting people in and stuff.
Sure.
Email, whatever.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, here, I'll just throw my email address in there.
Perfect.
All right.
Perfect. Thank you.
I mean, and even I guess the other thing would be are there things that you think, the project or even the foundation, because we can be a channel into the foundation as well, should be doing to support modules and tooling in a way that isn't being done today.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a good one.
We could write some of those down in the agenda if we want, but that's kind of the flavor of what I would come up with on the spot. And then, yeah, if you guys come with a particular set that that you want to discuss, that will give us some more concrete things to talk about in the meeting. Otherwise, I think for a first meeting, I wouldn't be terribly disappointed if people got to know each other and we just sort of agreed on what we thought made sense going forward in terms of how often to get together, how. Are there burning issues or not? And, if those are, just capturing some of the high level ones as a way to figure out what to the next steps might be on something.
All right. I thinking about it a little bit further, I think it would be helpful to have maybe somebody who is involved with modules. I mean, just kind of thinking about what's going to happen when that lands. Yeah. So that might be good. Just to, I don't know, if they have questions to ask us, or perhaps we have questions to ask them.
Yeah, okay. So if you think there's a fit there. So Dan, I don't know, you had mentioned a few people. Do you want to reach out to them and see if they're interested in coming?
Yep.
That way, if you have questions, certainly if the team, if the tooling side has questions, it'd be good to have somebody who can answer them a bit more easily.
Right. So, do you think it would be constructive to have a broad sort of opener with tooling folks, just to get set a baseline with, like, describe how your tooling leverages Node.js? I know that would be interesting to me personally, but I'm not sure that's context that's relevant to the broader group.
I think you kind of got to. I think that, sorry, I'll let Chris answer too, but I think it's interesting because it's kind of hard to understand each other if we don't understand what the module's doing and what, I mean, some of them probably, like NPM, we understand pretty well, right? Mm-hmm. But others may not be as obvious to people what the relationship is and integration dependence, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Right. There's NPM, but then there's also, like, new tooling that NPM is building, like MPX, right?
Right.
And things like that.
So, I agree that, the NPM, as it's, bundled with Node, we have good context, but, I do really like that, bringing together, folks from NPM and, having them participate at that level in a tooling discussion.
Actually, it does. What it does make me think of is, like, every meeting maybe could benefit from a what's new in terms of, are the modules planning something new that they think might affect Node and vice versa. Right? Like, because it's not necessarily a one-time thing, right? You're like, NPM is introducing something new, hearing about that up front, and it won't just be the people in the meeting. It's whoever else wants to watch the meeting afterwards. And if there's something particularly interesting that comes out of that, we can, repoint the people to the recording to go listen. And so it's another way to sort of bring the two-way communication, I think. So, yeah, I don't know, Chris, what do you think on that front?
Yeah, definitely. I think that would be a good question to ask. I feel like another one might be, why do you use Node.js to write your tools or whatever? I feel like that's some context that I think, I don't know.
Yeah, right. That's an assumption that I would have made, but I don't know that that's necessarily a safe one. Right.
Yeah, it's like, there traditionally JavaScript has not been a scripting language that people are going to reach for Python or whatever, or why are you using JavaScript and Node when you could have done this with a shell script or something like that. And I think that might be kind of a good one to at least. I feel like it would be helpful for some people to hear the answers.
Yeah, definitely. Like, those answers may be quite interesting in terms of, okay, so that's what's important about it, right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So I think that might be a good one, just to kind of get some more context. I feel like it's like, why would you write this in JavaScript? I've seen, not necessarily from Node Core or anything like that, but just kind of this general sentiment about from many about why the hell would you want to do that? Why don't you just
right?
So
you're doing what?
Dan.
Yeah.
One thing I think that it would be probably helpful if we did is also, and I'm totally raising your hand for this, and you can feel free to turn it down. Reach out to Chris Borchers from the JS Foundation and see if
nice.
there's anyone from their projects. I mean, Mocha is one of the projects, and so is Webpack.
Nice.
But that's probably something that would be a good way to get, this is basically a collected list of people who are already doing this, exactly what we're talking about. So that'd probably be a nice benefit there.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea as a way to, yeah.
And it also continues to help us kind of cross-promote the JS Foundation and Node Foundation and like cooperation there, I think.
I like that a lot.
Yeah, I can spam a mailing list and see if anybody's interested.
So that'd be great. Inside of the JS Foundation?
Yes.
Awesome.
I love that. Great.
Okay, so it sounds like we could put together a short agenda based on what we've discussed. Do we want to do that, or?
So I have been taking notes in issue 38. As it relates to agenda topics. So if we want to hop over there and look at that together, then we've got 5-ish questions that we can hang the discussion off of as a baseline. And we probably can't do too much more, right? With introductions and a fairly large group of folks. If we want to get in like 10 questions, it'll just we won't get to everybody.
Sure. Right? Yeah. So, Chris, does that cover what you think we should talk about in the first one? It looks.
Yeah, I like the direction this is going. So, yeah.
Awesome. And Dan, could you just make? Is that the issue that I was already that got shared earlier? Or was that issue 37?
37 is the issue that talks about, hey, we should get together today and plan for that, and then 38 was to build the agenda. Okay,
cool. So could you just link 38 from that and like say that was a result of, or 38 is a result of, like, it's the outcome of 37's meeting?
Sure.
Okay. Just, I want to make sure we connect the dots there and have that kind of log of, hey, here's everything. Especially for people who are coming in and don't necessarily know what's going on and how we do stuff on GitHub.
Right.
Right.
Just make sure we have that accountability.
That's great. Okay, so that's the big rock. Then I have a request from Mihai, and I've heard a request from a couple other folks to gather the enterprise, some of the representatives from the enterprise advisory group. And I'm thinking that the discussion topic, or one of the main discussion topics of the subsequent meeting. So a month from now, right? 2 weeks, 4 weeks from now, we should focus on that, see where that is, and either make a decision one way or the other. At this point, we may want to take it towards an end of life and say, all right, there's no critical mass around this, and we're going to fold it for now, and we'll reconvene as appropriate, or gather the resources and revitalize that effort.
Yeah, I mean, I think from the discussions we're having, it may fall in nicely under we have in the end user feedback a number of different groups, and that's just as we have the general end users, we've got the tooling end users we're talking to. You could, delivery channels could be a potential another one, and the enterprise. Maybe the name isn't quite right. The enterprise advisory board. Maybe name that to something like the large enterprises, or find something like that. And then it might fit quite nicely into this.
Right. Yeah.
And you know, in that case, like, because it doesn't, yeah, I'm not sure that it's sort of run out of steam. It's just we were stuck on a few other things, and if we just sort of get past that and you know, that group of people, we shouldn't stand in the way of them getting together and having these same, I don't know, you know, as long as the same kind of discussions that we're having now make sense, right?
Right. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, I think that, you know, the advisory, you know, is definitely something that folks, you know, gave a lot of feedback on. I like that direction. So, yeah, that's what I'd like to discuss, you know, following that.
Yep.
And, you know, that might be, like you're saying, that might actually just lead us to the next public session, right?
Exactly, right? Like our next public, yeah, large enterprises, there's a group who's already there.
Mm-hmm.
We would still, you know, if there's other people who want to select into that group, that'd probably be okay too. And then just actually, you know, talk about the specific things and concerns that, you know, that group of users has. So hopefully that's the way we can make it move forward.
Great. Sounds good. All right. I want to make sure we get any closing thoughts, any closing needs, and
just I have an opinion over here. So don't you think it's kind of mixed? So we'll have the tooling session in 2 weeks, and then you want to talk about the enterprise advisory group. Isn't that kind of mix a little bit? Mix up? Don't you want us to come earlier probably to meet again, guys? I mean, what I'm thinking is to put a meeting for us for user feedback between these two.
Okay. So you know, what I'm proposing for that follow-up meeting would be a session like this where we're planning rather than doing the public feedback, and then we'll have you know, subsequently the public session.
I guess Mihai was just suggesting maybe we could do the planning a week earlier.
Yeah, I'm probably, yeah, but it's just somehow they are mixed. So we want tooling, then in 2 weeks again we want something else. This is somehow mixed. At least we should put a base somewhere. So just or I propose a meeting, or probably I propose to go with the advisory group, maybe delay later by the end of April.
Well, I think what actually Dan was suggesting, maybe that it was like, we have the public feedback session, it's 2 weeks from now. Right. Then the next 2 weeks later is actually just a planning session. Mm-hmm. And then it would be 2 weeks later that we would probably have the enterprise advisory session.
Yeah, right. I think we're aligned there.
Okay.
You know, the only thing that we may need to do is just you know, riffing on what Mihai is saying there is, and we probably have enough space in our meeting to do this. We probably ought to, you know, in that subsequent meeting, you know, make sure we make time to, you know, digest together the user feedback session. Let's make sure.
Yeah, agreed. Yes. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Great. Well, you know, thanks, Chris, for you know, kicking this off and bringing this to user feedback, and really looking forward to doing this session. You know, gotten a lot of great results from you know, just having this open dialogue, and you know, looking forward to sharing that with everybody.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Great. So we'll talk to you guys all in a couple weeks.
Awesome.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.